Are you running a marathon? Oh my god, I could never run a marathon. You sure about that? My god, a marathon? That's like 42 kilometers, 26 miles. I don't understand those people.
That used to be me, but not anymore. Welcome to the Marathon Podcast. My name is Christian Warwick, aka Warwick Runs on different platforms. Very happy to have you here. Welcome back if you're a regular listener. If you're new to the pod, welcome to this podcast. I hope that you'll enjoy it. There are some news today. One of them being that the Marathon Podcast has its own Instagram now. Myles, today's guest, he told me that I definitely should have a separate account for the podcast. And I think that was a great push. I appreciate that, Myles. Now we're here with its own Instagram profile. You can obviously still follow me on my Instagram, but follow the Marathon Podcast for updates, for short clips from the podcast episodes and more. Before we jump into today's conversation, which I really think that you should listen to, by the way, it's one of those where I'm just so excited because it's about something that we haven't talked that much about, and that is running technique, how to improve your results and also stay free of injuries. So you really should keep listening. But before we do, I just want to quickly talk a little bit about something that happened on Saturday. I went out for a 30-kilometer long run. I was supposed to do like a progressive run. So 10 kilometers, then I stopped to have some water, just had like maybe 30 to 60 seconds of rest, kind of just to get the water, because I didn't have anyone to help me out on the run. And did that 3 times, so 3 times 10 kilometers like that. And it was a progressive long run. And I've never had such a good experience before. I was able to get to paces that I've never, ever had before, like ending it at 3:40 per kilometer pace. And just generally a really, really good feeling now that we're 5 weeks out from Trondheim Marathon that I'm training for. So those answers were so good. The last week was a really, really good week in terms of getting those answers for, or after having a heat wave here and everywhere I've been over the last 4 weeks. So just coming out on the other side, feeling so good has been just incredible. Just wanted to share that with you in case you have been struggling or still are struggling with the heat and all of that. Just know that you'll come out better on the other side. And this is just like one of those really key sessions for me before the marathon where I'm running almost marathon pace. And this time I wasn't really tired at the end. So really, really good signs, really good answers before the big race that it happens in 5 weeks. Thank you for listening to that. We're going to jump into the podcast, but before we do, I just want to remind you again to give this podcast a review. Give it a few stars if you like what you're hearing, because I would really appreciate it. The podcast will grow more, and give the Marathon Podcast a follow on Instagram. I think that if you're listening to this, it will benefit you. You will hopefully get a lot of stuff out of it by just following that account. And obviously, this podcast is free. My intentions are that this podcast will be a free for all forever. But if you want to pay me back, just give this podcast a review. And that's something that would really be appreciated. Today, we have a special guest on. I told you about Myles, who is a running technique coach. He's blown up on Instagram over the last few months. He's now up to 100K on his profile, and not without reason, because his profile has helped me a lot. He is posting videos on how to run properly, how to find your technique, and he's coaching people. And he has agreed to, or he said yes to coming on the podcast. He's sharing a lot of stuff on this podcast that you will usually have to pay for. I think that the conversation between us, it was great. And it feels like a trend these days that the episodes or the people, the guests coming on the pod, they just feel like friends. It's just a conversation between friends, and I really, really appreciate that. So if you want to improve your running, if you feel like you're not having progress, or even before you start training hard, I would really, really encourage you to listen to this episode and think about the things that Myles is talking about, because that will help you and enhance your running. I don't think we should waste any more time here. Let's jump to the conversation with Myles and lean back, go for a run, get in your car, get on your bike, whatever you want to do when listening to this podcast. Here's my conversation with Myles, aka Find Your Stride Coach on Instagram. Oh, and before you start listening, I'm sorry about the first 10-ish minutes here. My microphone was not connected, so the audio might not be as good, but I hope you survive the first few minutes, and then the audio will get better on my side.
I guess we can just start because I have so many questions. But the first question I have before you present yourself or before we dive into anything, um, how important would you say that running technique is for performance, whether it's for someone who's just running for fun or someone who wants to really perform?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was pretty important for even if you're just a generic runner. If it's something that you want to do and you want to make it a part of your life, then I do firmly believe that getting your technique sorted really makes the whole journey a lot easier. So, obviously, if you're looking in terms of performance, then yeah, there's massive gains to be had. But I think everyone should do a bit of technique work. So if you were to go to the gym and you were to start doing squats with heavy weights and you weren't doing it with particularly great technique, things are going to start hurting. So yeah, I think that everyone could do with a bit of technique work.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I like obviously having this podcast, it's fun to have you on for the listeners, but I feel like this is also going to be a conversation where I'm probably going to get a lot out of it myself, because I've realized now that I've been running with more structure for a couple of years, that from the very first kind of run that I started, like that I had training for my first marathon, I obviously started thinking a little bit about technique and heard about like higher cadence and all of that, but it's still there's still so much to learn, and I think most of us we don't really think about it. We go out for a run and that's it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so for the listeners, this episode is gonna be, I think it's gonna be very useful. People are probably gonna learn a lot. Um, but people are probably wondering who I'm talking to now. I know that your name is Myles. I've been following you for a while, but I think it's better for you to present yourself. So
Yeah, so yeah, well, I'm Myles Rawson, and yeah, I'm a running technique coach, specialist, movement coach, whatever you want to call me. I just try to, help people with their running as best as I can. So I sort of shot to a little bit of overnight fame on social media. Within the last 3 months, I've gained 100,000 followers on Instagram. So yeah, it's going pretty well, and yeah, that's sort of my story is yeah, just sort of become overnight on social media.
yeah, and yeah, like I told you just before we started recording, I started following you a few months back, and it's been very useful for me to see your content. And your content is very obviously running specific, but also on how to run
Mhm.
better technically. Um, what is your background? How did you learn all of this? What was your
Yeah.
introduction to running?
So I was working with a running coach after I sort of quit my short-lived rugby career. Well, it wasn't really a career. I never got paid for it, but I used to do it as a sort of weekend hobby, and I got injured all the time. So I had sort of three serious injuries in 1 year. So I dislocated my ankle, I tore a hip flexor, and I tore the cartilage in my ribs. So I decided, okay, maybe this sport isn't for me. So then I decided that I was going to take up running, and I thought, yeah, that's going to be a great way to reduce my sort of risks of injuries. But same with a lot of people is that I was having sort of aches and pains sort of crop up all the time. So sort of knee pain, lower back pain, hip flexor pain. And then I started working with a local running coach, and then I was starting to try and figure things out by myself and trying to work out how to get better technique. So I started trying to correct my landing and some certain other things. Worked with a local running just a regular running coach, and they gave me a few cues, and I didn't really think any of it made sense. They told me to do things like try and land quieter when you land. And I was like, well, that doesn't make much sense to me. How do I do that? So then that sort of just sent me down the rabbit hole of I was sort of getting overtrained by them. Overworked, and I was still suffering with these aches and pains. So I just started reading books and books and podcasts, everything I could sort of get my hands on and listen to. And then I was very lucky to work with one of the world's leading performance coaches, Shane Benzie, and he taught me a lot. And then after that, I've just gone on and just kept trying to continue my knowledge all the time. So yeah, that's my little story.
What was your initial goal with this? Did you have any goals with running in terms of running faster? What kind of made you dive so deep into the
Uh,
technical part?
I Yeah, I don't really know. I guess it was just sort of like a little calling to me, I guess you could say. When I get fixated on something, I tend to try to, really get fixated on it, and I try to really understand it. So I think in terms for me, is that I just wanted to be a little bit better of a runner. I wanted to be a little bit economical. And the thing I wanted mainly was it not to hurt when I was running.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was also something that I was curious about. I did ask you in the beginning here, uh, how important you think that the running technique is for performance, but how important would you say it is in terms of staying free of injuries and
Massive, yeah, massive. Yeah, if you're interacting with the ground with like an overstride or landing with the heel or the forefoot, then I feel like your injury risks are significantly higher. Posture all plays into it, so yeah, I think in terms of performance is sort of half 50% of it, and then reducing its injury is the other sort of 50% of it.
it makes me like when you're talking about this, the first thing that comes to mind is kind of like, do you think that good running technique is for everyone if they're just being taught the right way?
Yeah, I do think that most people, could definitely improve their running style and their technique, and it can reduce their amount of injuries if they start getting it right. I firmly believe it's for everyone. Obviously, we're all sort of different creatures, so we're all built slightly differently. So maybe it's not a one size fits all. Some people have certain things they have to overcome. But I generally feel like if you can start getting the basic movement and starting to understand how to move your body and load your body correctly, then it makes your whole journey a lot better.
When you are coaching other people or when
Hmm.
you were taking the approach to the technique, did you focus more on certain distances? Do you feel like there's a big difference between the running technique for, say, a 100-meter sprinter compared to a marathoner, or are the
Yeah,
ABCs the same?
there is between sprinters, but I sort of work on everything 400 meters and up. So yeah, I don't really focus on sprinting. I focus all on running technique. So anything that's not a sprint, I work on. And then your form should stay pretty consistent throughout. Your arms and your hands will drop slightly lower the faster you're going, but yeah, in terms of it should be pretty much the same. So as you um, get faster, some of the things are going to change. So your stride length, your cadence, and things are going to naturally go up. But in terms of what you're doing with your body, it should stay relatively the same.
I'm curious about because before we dive into like the um call it the technical part of this, I'm just curious about what do you think that uh for you, like when you started doing this, was it something that you noticed with your own running? Did you have a lot of improvement, like pace wise, or in terms of injuries? What was the
Yeah, but
biggest?
well, my injuries become pretty much non-existent overnight. So yeah, once I started working on it, I haven't really been injured since, apart from a stupid fall or something on a trail run. But that's more down to me than down to sort of joint or ache pain that I used to get. So the only sort of risk with that is the less you get injured, the more likely you are to be able to overtrain. So you can go the other way with it. I've suffered with overtraining syndrome in the past, which is brought on by my lack of injuries. So there's sort of pros and cons to everything. Yeah. So in terms of performance, yeah. So like I said to anyone, what would a year's injury-free running look like to you? So if you can get away with not injuring yourself and actually training smartly and correctly, sometimes I haven't trained as smartly as I needed to. But if you can get away without injuries, so taking 6 weeks or 3 months off, that can take a big hit in someone's training block. So if you can get away without work. If you can get away without being injured for a year, what does that look like in terms of performance? So that's as good as the athlete.
Yeah. But for you, like, so
Yeah.
if I was to look at it from your perspective, I would think that if I learned that much about running technique, I
Mhm.
would also be very interested in trying to kind of see how fast I could go myself.
Yeah.
So for you and your running, I don't know, are you competitive yourself? Do you race?
No, I'm not
What
very
what
competitive, and I'm not a sort of big fan of sort of tracking my own paces and splits and stuff like that. So for me, I would say running is sort of part of my sort of spiritual journey. I just like to go outside and enjoy it. Since I've stopped using my watches, yeah, I've just found that I'm actually able to enjoy running much more. My times are going down. I can feel they're going down, but I don't really take exact sort of splits weekly, monthly. I might put my watch on every sort of 3 or 4 months and then see what the update is. But yeah, for me, it's more about getting out there and actually enjoying my movement and stuff like that. I feel that's one of the things I will admit that I've struggled with in the past is when I start looking at heart rate, I start looking at pace too often, then you start to get into a sort of like negative feedback loop of, oh, this week I did this distance at this pace at this heart rate. Next week I'm struggling a little bit more. Something's going wrong. Your Garmin can beep at you that you're underperforming within the sort of first 4 or 5 minutes. So yeah, I found that my running journey become a lot more enjoyable when I just went out and just started running for fun rather than running for sort of times and distances.
I like that approach, and especially what you said about like it's kind of become part of your spiritual journey. I think that is great. But I do assume that in the beginning when you were, because for me, I was talking about this in the previous episode where, like the day when I really discovered how smaller steps that was a very beneficial for me. It felt like I was running so much slower.
Yeah.
Like mid-run, it felt like I was running so much slower. And then I got to a point where it was like, I looked at my watch and I'm actually running faster.
Oh, okay.
And I
Yeah.
assume that in the beginning when you were doing this, that you kind of needed tools like your watch or something to kind of measure how less effort in terms of better technique kind of led to faster pace or faster times. How was that in the beginning for you when you were learning, reading, and being coached yourself? How did you find that
Yeah, well,
you had improvement?
I would expect most people to actually have a performance drop when they start working on their technique. So, your body gets very wired up for the way that you're currently moving. So technically that's the most efficient way that you can run at that point, because your body sort of made those neural muscular pathways to make it the most efficient. Doesn't mean it is the most efficient, but it is at that point in time. So yeah, when you start working on your technique, you're starting to use your brain a lot more. We're going to be using new muscles, tendons, and fascial systems. So it's naturally going to be a little bit harder. So yeah, I do sort of expect people's performance to go down momentarily, and then once you've got 2, 3, 4 weeks, then it should be sort of a shape that goes upwards. So in terms of I didn't see overnight improvement, because when we're using our brain for our running, that we're actually using a lot more energy. So when we're really concentrating on things, then you will see a performance drop. But over time, it becomes much more sort of fluid. You stop thinking about it as much, and it just becomes a sort of natural part of your movement. So kind of like riding a bike. When you start doing it and you're overthinking doing it, everything seems a lot harder. But then after a while, you get on the bike, you don't think about it, and then it's with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, right. But like when I'm looking at your videos, because you're using yourself, right, in a lot of the videos.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that a little bit more now. Yeah.
And it looks so effortless. Like it looks like you're almost floating when you're running, and it's really cool to see. And it even though it seems effortless, I assume that we do need some kind of strength training in here. There's maybe some muscle groups or something that need to be in place. So if a runner listening to this who's not doing strength training or who's fairly new to running, what would you say that are like the ABCs, the foundation kind of for good technique before you even start running? What do you need to start working on to be able to work on the right technical?
Yeah, I would say probably number one is your ability to relax. So to get into that sort of state where it looks so sort of effortless is, as I increase my speed, that I try to relax my body more. So then we can use our fascial system much more. We can start being much more springy and bouncy. In terms of strength, I think it's always good. I think, sort of in the Western world, we're sort of suffering with a problem of underdeveloped glutes that aren't firing properly. So, I've suffered with this myself. So one of the things I would recommend to most people is actually going and seeing a decent physio maybe once a year, and, actually spending a bit of money with someone who's got a lot of experience, and try and find out what your muscle imbalances that you have. Because, I used to be an electrician. I was sort of didn't really activate my glutes in my job. Everything was sort of stretched forward, and my sort of posture had started to become rounded forward. So, I was able to start correcting my posture, correcting some of my glute strength with some exercises that I got for a physio, and that really helped my running. So, don't neglect your glutes, and if you can't feel them when you're doing squats or Romanian deadlifts, then we've got a bit of a problem. And then the sort of third thing I would recommend people work on is their day-to-day posture. So, as I'm sitting to you, talking to you now, I've got a back seat rest, but I'm sat 2-3 inches in front of it, trying to keep my posture upright, my head position upright, so things aren't slouched forward, because our fascial system regenerates itself every 7 months. So if we spend 7 months with bad posture, our running is going to take that up. Whereas if we spend 7 months with good posture, it doesn't have to be perfect all day, every day, but we don't want our default to be rounded forward.
So to the listeners now watching this, they're going to see me change a little bit of my posture now that I'm sitting here.
Yeah, everyone starts doing it when it's brought to their attention.
Yeah, no, but this is good. Like, and this is what I really want to hear more about. Obviously, the daily things, the ABCs of like what can you do in your daily life that are not necessarily big stones, right? Like, because you obviously have the part of going out on a run, but then small things like this, it's really useful, I think. But then I'm curious because obviously, as a running coach, whether it's clients of yours or just people that you see on social media or runners passing you on the street, I'm sure you get into this habit of almost analyzing whatever runner you see, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What are, if you were to see like comment on a few things, like the most common mistakes that you see runners do, what are those?
So I think, it sort of all starts with the head position. So if the head position is forward, which most runners is, then their posture goes forward, which means they are more likely to overstride. So it all, just from putting your head position forward can like dramatically affect the whole rest of your chain. So that's the sort of number one thing is like, if we start looking at the ground, we can be carrying the equivalent of 20 kilograms on our shoulders and spine. So our head is on average 5 kilograms, and each inch that we point it down, we add another 5 kilograms to that shoulder and spine. So, same with our mobile phones. If we're looking at our mobile phones all day, that's why people get tight shoulders, and that's why postures get rounded forward. And one of the biggest things I'll say that most people are missing out on is hip mobility. So people's hips, really struggle to move sort of like in this fashion as, sort of like a figure of 8 pattern, which means they can't actually activate their glutes. So they're limited their range of motion of pushing back, which means they sort of go up and down more rather than being able to push back and utilize their glutes. So, in terms of stride length, our vertical oscillation is going up, but our stride length is going down.
Yeah, and this part is interesting because I remember reading a few years ago Born to Run. I don't know if you've read that book.
Yeah.
But
classic.
I think maybe it was Born to Run too. There was somewhere where they were talking about how perfect running technique is kind of like if you're on one of those scooters, or like what you call it, the kicker. When you like that kick, whether it's on a skateboard or one of those, like that is the perfect one. And I was like, I don't really understand this. And then I saw your content the other day where you were talking about this, not up and down, but kind of more like, I don't know, you were saying something about pushing and not, because you were saying that a lot of people will lift their legs just because they've seen that, or lift their heels just because they've seen runners do it, instead of actually having that power through. And then it all made more sense to me. It's more like a pushing motion rather than, I don't know, you can explain this better than me. I don't know if you understand what I mean.
So I think you're on about the sort of knee drive and the heel lift. So a lot of people see that a lot of elite runners are getting their heels like up near their butt because they've got a really efficient movement pattern. But people then start trying to replicate that by lifting their heels up. So when you push the ground behind you really hard, that stores elastic recoil, and then your sort of heels and your knees should drive up naturally. So we don't want to try lifting our knees, and we don't want to try lifting our heels. We just want to focus on pushing the ground behind us. So the easiest way that I would get people to start thinking about it is if you were on a treadmill that was turned off and you had to get that treadmill turning underneath you, you would start trying to push everything backwards, okay? Whereas most other runners, they tend to sort of reach out in front of them and land on a heel or a forefoot strike, which actually sends the treadmill the other way. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it did make sense, definitely.
Yeah, so that's your body. So when you're overstriding with that heel or forefoot strike, or even a midfoot strike, if you're overstriding, your body is basically, that treadmill's working the wrong way. And what that essentially is your body getting beat up with every step.
Is there any way for a runner, like say someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, but I'm not sure if I'm overstriding or not. Is there some way of finding out or figuring out if they are overstriding?
Yeah, film yourself or get someone to film you. And then, start looking at other runners and seeing what they look like, and then start comparing yourself. So if your foot is way out in front of you, then you know that you've got some work to do. And then, over time, you'll get better at it. So no one's going to get, the perfect cycling motion on the first day. It's one of those things, the more you do it, the better you become at it. So I just practice it. So, when you focus on technique elements, I always just say focus on one thing at a time. Because if you start trying to think of 6 or 7 things to do, your brain's just going to go, whoa, this is not right. And you're just going to want to go back to, the way that you were running originally. So yeah, break it down, small little changes, and then they soon add up.
Yeah, and I find it very interesting what you're saying about, like, obviously filming yourself and looking at other runners. And for me lately, and I'm going to ask you more about that, like the things that I'm curious about for me personally. Over the last few months, I've been running more. I've gotten faster, so things are better. I had less injuries. I can run more without any pain. So I feel like there's definitely been improvement. And one of them is that I'm, like I said, like smaller steps. I feel like I'm moving less, probably like less over striding. But what's interesting is that the feeling, or the kind of, call it the picture I have in my head of what this looks like, it's that I'm almost like a penguin, just flopping, like barely moving my legs. And then when I'm running past, because the way I observe myself is I don't have a lot of people filming me these days. I'm just looking at big windows or something when I'm running past. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I actually look more like a runner now. And there's like my heel is going higher up behind me, and my legs are, it seems like I'm moving more, and there's like more, I don't know, more air coming in between my legs and the surface. And what's interesting about this, and I'm curious about how you approach this as a coach, that it looks so different. Like it's a big difference between what it looks like and what it feels like I'm doing. In a way. And I actually feel like it looks better than what I think it looks like when I picture it in my head. And how do you approach this part of it?
So I do a lot of coaching with people, and I tend to tell people that sort of feel versus real is people can think they're doing all sorts of things. So the most common one I get is, I'm 100% landing on my midfoot, I don't need to work on overstriding. And then you take a video of them, slow it down, and then, oh, here we go, overstriding, landing with a heel strike. So people think they're doing a lot of things. So I just think you can't argue with video evidence. So the more you can start videoing yourself and start being able to coach yourself. Maybe I'm putting myself out of a job here, but it's very hard to make significant changes without actually visualizing what is going on. So we're very lucky that we can do this all with modern technology. Before it would have been coaches just telling people what to do and getting them to try and feel and understand it. But I think the best thing to do is just starting to trust the process. And, one of the things I do get people to do is practice good versus bad form. So, once they start correcting their foot strike and overstriding, then actually go back and try overstriding with a heel or a forefoot strike, feel the difference. So, and then people will go, wow, that feels 10 to 20% better in a couple of minutes. So, I think just start to tune into your body and start to video yourself, and basically try to feel it and then try to replicate it in reality.
Yeah. And then you've already mentioned quite a lot now, like where you land, like whether you land forefoot, heel, or midfoot. And I feel like I've read and heard a lot of people saying, oh, it doesn't matter. You are either one of these, and you can like optimize based on what kind of runner you are. And then I was looking at your Instagram yesterday, and you just wrote always midfoot. Can you explain this?
So if we try to imagine the foot, I've got a model of the foot here. So when we're landing on a heel or a forefoot, we've only got sort of one point of contact at any point. So if we can land on our forefoot and our heel equally, that will give us a much more stable landing. So that foot doesn't try to twist and turn. So, we pair that with an overstride. That foot is trying to rock and roll. This is why people are getting knee pain, ankle pain, hip pain, back pain. So yeah, in terms of, there are a lot of elite runners who do land slightly on their heel, but they aren't overstriding and landing with a heel strike. But we under our foot, we have an arch, or most people have an arch. So, we evolved to have an arch under our foot. So that's the point of our foot being springy and bouncy. So why would we want to land on our heel? That's not going to get it activating fully. So if we land with that midfoot strike, you can see here, oh, that's my plantar fascia, that's my arch compressing, and now I'm absorbing that load. So it might not matter, but it's been associated with I think about a 10% reduction in ground contact time. So I would probably take that. And it just makes sense when you actually look at the model of the foot, how it compresses and how your foot sort of acts as a spring. Someone can argue with me against that. I'm willing to listen to it, but it just looks like it makes sort of biomechanical sense to me.
Yeah, it does, and I was personally very happy when I saw it, because like I'm more of a midfoot runner. At least that's what I was taught when I was. So I did some track and field when I was a kid, and I remember someone told me, and I'm curious about your take on this too, to kind of like land a little bit on the outside, but midfoot, and then roll kind of. Is that?
Yeah, that is a good midfoot landing. It's actually very hard to land perfectly like that, so it should sort of land and then sort of collapse and pronate in slightly. So, we've been told that pronation is, the worst thing that can happen for running. So we put people in stability shoes, but a little bit of pronation is actually a sign of a healthy foot functioning, and that allows us to, store more elastic recoil through our foot.
Yeah, because that was my next question when we're talking about this. Because if you look at Kipchoge, for instance, like you can see that in slow motion, you can see that there's a pronation going on there where he goes a little bit in, and then you're like, oh, that's weird, because that's contradicting from, like you said, everything that we've been taught or heard throughout our lives about pronation and things like that. So, do you feel like you have a lot of clients coming to you and seeing that and they're like, oh, but that's wrong, or something like that?
I have so many clients who've, I think running shoe shops have got a license to print money at the moment by selling people the pronation problem. So obviously, overpronation is a bad thing. So the trouble is, the sort of last, 50 or 60 years, we've had the tendency for our shoe boxes, the toe boxes, to get narrower and narrower. So if you've read Born to Run, you probably know where I'm going with this. And that gives our foot sort of a real unstable landing. So the toes should be the widest part of our feet. So this has caused quite a lot why. And if we're landing on a heel, we haven't really got that sort of stability of the tripod landing. So things are starting to try and twist and turn. So pronation is not bad. I think, people should pronate, but overpronation is bad. But I would say that generally comes down to more of the footwear that we're wearing. So everything tends to have got tighter and tighter in terms of our toe box. So, we don't have the stability that we usually do.
But how do you know? So unless I was working with you, how would I know that I was doing it too much, like overpronation?
Well, if you're feeling pain from your foot overpronating, or it feels unstable, then I would say that was too much. I've had it before where I've suffered with pain from it, but I would just recommend people start wearing wider shoes, start putting things like toe spacers between their shoes, between their toes, and basically my recommendation is, if you can't wear a pair of shoes with toe spacers in, then they're too tight.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's interesting that you're saying this, because I was struggling with your typical runner's knee a year or two
Yeah,
ago, and then I was in New Zealand, and I'd read obviously the Born to Run books about barefoot running and stuff like that. And in the beginning, when I was reading the book, I took it a bit too far. I went out like I think I did two short runs barefoot, like no shoes.
Yeah.
And then I did 10K barefoot, like almost immediately. Stupid, very stupid. But then after having struggled with this knee pain for a year-ish, I went into this running store in New Zealand and they sold me a pair of Ultra shoes.
Yeah.
So, and they were great. It was like from one day to the other, I was able to run more. And obviously a very wide toe box.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with the barefoot shoes and all of that. But what I've realized and what I kind of took away from that is like what you said about the wider toe box and bigger shoes. So from me starting to run in 2023 up until today, I've in size EU, I've gone from 41 to 43 and a half.
Okay. Wow.
and there are a couple of reasons for that. So first of all, I came from speed skating where we were used to having boots that were super tight. We were kind of told that they need to be 1 or 2 sizes below your normal just because they're supposed to be so tight. And that's a different sport. But I think I took that mentality with me to running. So that was one. But then also what I realized, and I can clearly see on my feet today, is that as I was wearing bigger shoes, my toes obviously got more space. So they started expanding kind of. And now they look very different. And with that, I think that as I started going like one size up and like a size and a half up, I gave my feet more room. And then all of a sudden they were too tight too. And then so now I'm at 43 and a half and I'm like, this is crazy. Like my younger brother, he always had bigger shoes than me. And the other day we were comparing and we had the same size shoes. And he was like, what happened? I've always had like 2 sizes more than you. Is this something that you've seen too, that people are, that the feet kind of grow?
Yeah, I actually personally experienced the opposite. So as the sort of, arch under my foot started to strengthen and started to get bigger, my shoes size actually come down a little bit. So I went from a sort of size 10 to a size 9 in the UK. I think that's 44 EU to 43 EU.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I guess it can happen both ways. I haven't had a lot of people report their feet are getting bigger. It's usually sort of the opposite, I found, but that is interesting.
I'm sure it also comes from, like I said, having this mentality of things, performance need to be, then it needs to be tight, right? Yeah. Like I think that was the thing for me. And now I'm struggling. So for me now, I usually have much longer shoes, but I need them to be wider because like you said, a lot of shoes, they're so narrow. So even though it's a size like 43, they might be too long in terms of the length, but in terms of getting them wide enough, I'm struggling to do that. And then obviously you have some shoe models or brands that are better and worse. And that is something that I'm also curious about for you in your profession. And personally, I've definitely felt that some brands are not good for me. Like I can go for one run in some brands and then I feel pain immediately just after 10K. And then there are other brands or other shoes that I can just go out the day after and run and I don't feel that same pain. And I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that exact brand, but it's just like individual preferences. How do you approach this as a coach when you're guiding your athletes?
So I'm a massive fan of Ultra myself. That's pretty much all I run in. Wide toe box, relatively low arch support. So, we've had the tendency with the toe boxes getting narrower is that we've now started to add more arch support under our foot. So when we start squeezing in the toe boxes, that starts to stretch out your plantar fascia, which causes you pain. So the shoe companies have been very smart and they've decided to add a load of arch support under that. So you're not feeling the pain of it, but you're certainly weakening your feet further and further. So yeah, I recommend shoes that are wide toe box with low arch support and low heel to toe drop. So we didn't evolve to really have a large heel to toe drop, and this is particularly a problem for women's shoes. They've just excessively gone. Some of them are like up to 13 mil of heel to toe drop, which just isn't good. Putting your feet in that massively unnatural position. So, one of the things I will say is shoe companies like Nike. So they will sell you their Alpha Flies, which are 8 mil heel to toe drop. And very tight. They're not the same as the running shoes that Kipchoge is wearing. So he's got his own specially designed carbon plates. He's got his own shoes that are wide enough for his feet. They're all specially designed, and he's won most of his marathons in about a 4 mil heel to toe drop. So less than half, or no, sorry, exactly half of the heel to toe drop that they're being sold on the shelves for. So yeah, I would be very careful with the shoes that you buy, because they can really mess up your feet longer term.
Yeah. Do you have any shoes that you're like almost like overall for everyone is like, these shoes you've seen that these are bad or these are good, and also if you can touch on because I think that a lot of people listening to this, they're like, oh yeah, ultra, it sounds good and all, but I need carbon plated shoes, I need fast shoes for my marathon. Like what are shoes that still can be good and good for them?
I mean, I would struggle to say that I find another shoe company that is good as Ultra, but I don't think Ultra have got a 4 mil carbon shoe at the moment. So I think that's something that they probably need to work on. And for some strange reason, is their only carbon shoe has got narrower, a very slim profile. So it just sort of doesn't go along with the rest of their ethos. If you want to use carbon shoes on race day, I would recommend practicing in them a little bit. Do not become over reliant on carbon shoes, because the same thing is that we're narrowing the toe box again. We're putting arch support, and now we're putting a carbon plate under our foot. So we're really weakening our feet and not allowing them to do the job they were designed to do as feet. So I'm all for people having a pair of race day shoes. Obviously get the performance benefits out of it, but if you strengthened your feet up by using something that's more natural for 6 months, and then you stack the carbon shoes on top of it, I would say that's better than becoming over reliant on the carbon pair of shoes. So if you work on your foot strength, by wearing something barefoot or minimalistic from day to day, you can get about on average 60% increase in foot strength over a 6-month period. So I would take that over a pair of carbon shoes any day.
And speaking of these barefoot shoes, do you have one model? You were talking about Ultra, but like one model that stands out?
Well, I like Vivo barefoot. That's something that I've always worn. But same with everything. If you're going to go from not wearing shoes like this to Ultras or Vivo barefoots, is you really need to build up over time. Don't go out and do 10K runs for them. So I think the first run I did in a pair of Vivo barefoots was about 250 meters, because I felt everything light up that was hurting in all sorts of different ways that I wasn't used to.
Are there any specific models within those two brands that you're like, these stand out?
I like the Primus lights. I don't really have a specific model. The thing is that they are quite expensive, but I've had mine for 3 years, and they've just been fantastic. So they've outlasted any other shoe. So the initial outlay was a bit more expensive, but no. And same with Ultras. I think my shoes just last for ages, which is, because everyone likes buying new things, I want to buy more shoes more often. But because, I land and hit the ground well, I don't go through shoes as often as most people. So mine lasts from anywhere from a year to 2 years.
personally, and I don't know if you've experienced the same, but so the first ultra shoes that I bought,
Yeah.
they were Escalante 3, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then I bought number 4, like Escalante 4.
Yep.
And personally, I thought that 3 was much better than 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that was. There was something about the 4 that seemed much more stiff, and I didn't get that same experience as with the 3.
Yeah, I've not actually worn any of the Escalante.
Okay. No.
I've worn the Racers and Experience and a couple of other models, but not that specific one.
Yeah. I do think that, unfortunately, and myself included, a lot of the listeners will still really want, because we're buying into the marketing of the bigger shoe brands and stuff like that. So we'll still wear that or use them quite a lot.
Yeah.
In terms of variation, because we keep hearing about that it's smart to have a shoe rotation. I keep saying that to other people because I've had a good experience with that myself.
Yep.
Is that just marketing, or is there something in that to kind of have different shoes for different workouts or throughout the week?
Yeah, I've never personally bought into it. If you get a running shoe that is functional, so wide shoe, less arch support, and fits you well, I don't really see the benefit of changing shoes all the time. Because when I'm running in those ultras, I can actually feel my feet doing the work. So if I was to put something else on, which has got arch support, narrow toe boxes, and which is compromising the way my foot works, then yeah, maybe it makes sense to do that. But I would say get a pair of shoes that actually lets your feet do the work.
How do you work with your clients on this? Like, if someone wants to work with you,
Mm-hmm.
do you try to convince them to go for these barefoot shoes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do. So I can tell people to do it. Not necessarily all of them are going to take what I take as advice. I would probably say 70 to 75% of people actually try to take in what I say and actually listen to it and do what I say, but 25% are stuck in their camp, and that's fine. I might not even necessarily be right. So movement and everything like that is it's changing all the time. So what might necessarily be right for me and what I think is right might not actually be right, and vice versa. So it's all about having an open mind and having if someone gives you a good answer, then having the willingness to sort of change your perspective. So that's what I try to do, is just change people's perspectives on it.
Yeah, I think that is something that we all need to work on. And I sometimes I catch myself being like, oh, I actually bought into this marketing that I clearly knew was marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like I know that this is just marketing, like you said about Nike and their customized or custom shoes for the pro runners.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when I've had a shoe, I'm like, how is it possible that like Jakob Ingebrigtsen or Kipchoge, like that they're not getting injured because these shoes are not good. Like I can feel that they're not good. And obviously it could be just me, but then like hearing what you're saying, and I've heard it before, that they do have custom shoes. They are different than the ones.
Yeah, they're not stupid.
So no, but so say I was being coached by you, and you managed to convince me to start running with barefoot shoes, but I still wanted to.
I don't recommend people go out and run in barefoot shoes. No.
So sorry. So the ultra, for instance, an ultra, ultra. Sorry, I need to be more specific. In my head, that is more
on the back of this message, thinking I'm telling them to go running barefoot.
So say I bought a pair of ultra shoes, and I was running in them, and like you said, you obviously have to ease into that too if you haven't done that before. Get used to that, but when your body is eventually used to that, and I still want to run a marathon. Say it's the beginning of my marathon block. I'm already used to the ultra shoes, and with a marathon goal, I also want to use a pair of super shoes. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have to be specific on what kind of super shoes, but how in the training, like for throughout the week, how do you balance or mix those shoes? Where do you use the super shoes to get used to those and the ultra shoes?
Yeah, I would recommend maybe using a couple of runs to get them loosened up so they start fitting your feet better. In terms of, if you were to use a pair of ultra shoes for your running and then you decide to go for a Hoka, I would try to go for the widest ones possible. And just accept that you might have a little bit of foot pain on the day because you've done all the hard work, and your feet might have got wider over that period of time. So wear things like sort of toe socks that are going to start to help the foot rub and stuff like that. I think Ultra should really bring out a full male carbon wide toe box range, and that would be the best solution. Or just do the work on the strength and accept that it might actually be more functional for you to just wear a pair of 4mm non-carbon plated shoes, if that's what you've done all your training in. If it feels uncomfortable to go back to the other shoes, then maybe just carry on with the shoes that you've got and hope for the best. Yeah.
So you don't think that, or do you think that it's also kind of a market? So full disclosure, yesterday, just before I went to bed, I bought another pair of the Puma Fast R3, probably the most hyped shoes in the world right now. I have one pair already. I'm doing a marathon in 5 weeks' time.
Yep.
And then I was like, okay, I need to have a second pair so I can use the pair that I already have in training for more of my key sessions before the marathon.
Yeah.
And then I can have a pair of fairly fresh ones for the marathon.
Yeah.
Obviously buying into all the marketing again But do you think that in terms of performance and in terms of just being prepared on the day of your race, that you don't necessarily need to have trained in the super shoes throughout your marathon block, that you can train in, say, ultras, and then come marathon day, maybe you've had one training in them just to get used to them a little bit, but then you will still be able to perform and it won't be too much of a difference?
Yeah, I would say you would perform better because you've done all the hard work of strengthening your feet over those months, rather than, I've seen people who have worn nothing but carbon plate shoes and they're coming up with stress fractures, things like that, is because your feet are designed to absorb and take the impact. The more we start relying on our shoes to take the impact of our feet, this is where the problems come. So that energy doesn't just disappear, it just gets translated somewhere else in your body, and if your feet can't take it up, something else will.
Yeah, and this is where I'm a bit surprised by Adidas. They have this Adidas Adizero Boston model where it's carbon plated and it's so popular. Mm-hmm. And personally now, I bought them and I used them for a couple of runs and I was like, you know what? I don't want to wear carbon plated shoes for anything but my race specific workouts.
Yeah.
And according to you, I probably shouldn't even use them for my race specific workouts, but at least I'm trying to minimize it to once or twice a week, just for those higher pace workouts. Why do you think it is that do you think that they just know that people are buying into the carbon plated shoes and that is why they're
there is a performance benefit to using carbon plated shoes. There's not. Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I think typically you can see about a 2 to 4% increase in running economy from using them. But, if you've weakened your feet by 10% by using them too much, it can really start working against you in your favor. So I would say do the exercises, do the feet strengthening stuff, and then use that extra 2 to 4% on race day, with hopefully the extra increase in 60% foot strength over 6 months, then you'll be in a lot better position than if you wear them all the time.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna talk a little bit more about like I'm sure a lot of listeners here now they're intrigued and they're like, but how do I improve my technique?
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, like, I'm curious about the clients that you've had now. How long is it that you've been working as a coach?
So just over a year now. So yeah, I started off coaching people in my local field, not really knowing what I was doing, and then just kept taking it up and up a lot. So, and then the last few months has been a bit transformative. I've worked with a few celebrities, elite athletes, and a lot of people sort of in the high rock space I'm starting to coach now as well. So not a lot of marathoners, funnily enough, so a bit ironic. But yeah, Claire Holt, who I'm training for her New York City Marathon. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm curious to hear the people you've been working with, or people you just been guiding or helping out. Like, how do you see the results? And because I assume that with your experience now, that with like working with you for say a few months, people will definitely see a lot of improvement in like a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah.
Can you say something about, like, if you want to share a story about some runners, or you don't have to name drop them, but
one of the runners I worked with, we were doing some sort of advanced sort of metric work. So we were doing some sort of 400-meter repeat. So I said, just go out, do a 400-meter lap, record your data, and then I try to always get people to guess what their data is rather than look at your watch. So if you are going to, that's a really good thing to mention, is if you are obsessed with using your watch and heart rate and pace, always try and guess what your pace and your heart rate is before you actually look at your watch. So always start trying to build that sort of perception of your body, and then use the data to confirm or deny whether you are in the right ballpark. So one of the things that we got him to do is just do a 400-meter lap, and we were doing sort of a 5 times 400-meter repeat. So, and then we worked on things like, how do we improve our stride length for that lap? So you go out and you try and improve your stride length for that. How do we improve our cadence for that lap? And then the biggest one is, how do we reduce our ground contact time? So the shorter ground contact time we have, the faster we're going to go. And just by thinking about cycling his legs and pushing his legs back, he dropped, I think it was 15 or 14 seconds off his lap time for the same effort.
Same effort. 15 seconds.
Yeah.
On a 400-meter track.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. If that is not reason to work with you, I don't know what is. That's crazy. But was he able to feel that himself, or did he feel like he was running this?
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to do, is get people to feel things. So, I don't tell people to get obsessed over numbers. There's no magic stride length. There's no magic cadence. There's no magic ground contact time. All vertical oscillation is what we want to see, is these metrics are improving over time.
But do you feel like, whether it's for yourself or for your clients, that if you see the difference between feeling like they're doing it the right way compared to feeling like they're actually going faster? Because sometimes that doesn't necessarily align with each other, that you can feel like, oh, now I did perform better technically, but it might still feel like, oh, I'm still running slower because it feels like I'm putting less effort into this, right? Do you feel like that is feedback that you get? Like, was that 15 seconds? It felt like I was running just as fast.
A lot of the time is that you get people saying that it starts to feel effortless. So obviously it's not effortless, because you're going to tire out sooner or later. But once you start getting that good movement, that good rhythm, and being able to chase impact rather than being afraid of it, then that's really exciting. And when people start feeling that, then it's like a light bulb moment goes off for them.
Yeah. I remember one of your videos, and I think that you were saying something about how a lot of people think that their upper body and shoulders should be like super stable, like not moving at all, but that you actually, like, when you're doing it right, you're kind of flowing with your hips. There's some kind of connection with your hips and your shoulders.
So ties back into one of the things I said earlier, is that most people's hips are very tight, which causes their shoulders to rotate far too much. So you see people's shoulders going way too much like this, their arms sort of flinging back, and that's all just because they haven't got the mobility in their hips. So if you can't get your hips back far enough, you can't use your diaphragm properly, so which means you can't breathe properly when you're running. So, a lot of issues can be caused just from the lack of hip mobility. We can't access our glutes properly. It makes it harder for us to start cycling our legs. It makes it harder for us to get our posture correct. So, working on your hips and getting them open and just sort of feeling that body as, as you push back, the opposite shoulder goes back and vice versa.
And I think that a lot of people tend to forget about the upper body, right? Like you don't think about your arms, you don't think about your shoulders and your upper body at all. You already have mentioned now a lot of things, and also like how you keep your head and all of that. Now that we're getting closer to the end of our conversation, I'm curious about if you were to explain a perfect running technique. And I'm sure that is hard, but what is that? And also, what can people think about in the beginning to kind of just start their journey throughout the running technique?
Yeah, so I think, the easiest thing to do is start from the head and work your way down. Once you get your head position right, so try to keep your eyes on the horizon as much as you can. Obviously, I know that for trail runners, you're going to have to look down, or if you're going downhill, you're going to have to look down a bit. But we should have a sort of slight forward lean as well when we're running downhill, whereas people tend to lean back and try to, then start trying to overstride and correcting themselves. But in terms of, basic running technique, I would say get your head up, eyes on the horizon, keep your shoulders nice and relaxed. I would just say, most people's shoulders are rolled forward, so we want them to just sort of feel like we're opening our chest a bit. So don't try and force anything back, because that's going to make things super stiff, but just feel like we're opening our chest up a little bit. That's going to help us breathe, access our diaphragm. Relax your shoulders and start driving back with your elbows. So don't try and feel like you're reaching your arms in front. Everything in our running motion needs to be going backwards in order for us to go forward. So that's probably the most important thing you can think about. The more you get things going backwards, the better you are going to be at going forward. So drive back from the elbows. They'll come through naturally as a result of elastic energy. So don't try and overreach. You overreach, then your opposite leg overreaches. So just focus on getting things going back. Try and get your posture upright. So I say to people, classic one, get a balloon on top of your head, feeling like something's holding your head up. That will allow you to be much more springy and bouncy. And then that should start to take out some of the tilt in your waist, okay? And then with that chest open, try and feel like something is pulling your chest towards the horizon, and then we'll start to get that forward lean from the ankles rather than from the waist. And then cycle your legs. Try to land with a midfoot landing. So if you're landing on your heels, try filming yourself, pointing your toes down to the point where you can start to feel it. Don't look at your feet, because like I said, you start looking down, everything else goes wrong. Then cycle your legs, start pushing your legs back, and then try and push back from the center of your foot, and then that will activate your glutes.
And then when you're talking about the landing, I feel like I said, for me, I've kind of thought about having shorter strides, and like that penguin example that I used. What do you usually tell your clients or runners in terms of because a lot of people will, even though they see that they're overstriding,
Yeah.
it's still hard to kind of, okay, then I'm gonna stop doing that, and then they film themselves again, and it's like, oh, I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
What is the best thing to think about or to do to make sure that you're not overstriding?
Well, I don't agree with. Obviously, you don't want to ever shorten your stride length more than is needed. So it should be as a result of a good cycling motion. So we could stick on a metronome and we could set the beat to 180, and we would take really good, nice, short little strides. But actually, what we've done there is we've sacrificed stride length for the sake of cadence. So I'm of the opinion that you want your stride length to be as big as you can. And then a cadence is just a sort of product of good movement. So when we start landing and cycling our legs correctly and start focusing on that movement rather than numbers, then that's when I think you'll get the most performance benefits. So just feel like we're trying to work those legs back. And then when you get it right, you will feel the difference. You can't not feel the difference. It's taken out the impact that you'll getting. So just practice and film yourself and practice until you get it right and right again, and then try and repeat getting it right and right again, and then practice a bit of good versus bad, and then that's you halfway there to fixing your overstriding forever once you practice it.
But do you focus at all on like landing under your body? Are there things that you're telling your clients?
So,
or
that's one thing. That's one common myth of that everyone should be landing sort of under their center of mass. Well, no one does that. That everyone lands with their foot in front of it because that allows you to sort of absorb your fascial chain much more effectively. So. No one lands under their center of mass.
No. Okay, that's interesting. I think a lot of us, we need to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about, and this I guess is on a personal note, but I hope and think that it will be relevant to others too. Because when you gave the answer here, I was like, because you were saying like you don't like to think about shorter strides because you should always kind of aim at having longer strides but still not overstriding. And so what I realized for myself at least is that the shorter strides that is just a feeling. Like it's kind of like something that I'm thinking about, and then as a result of that, I don't feel like I'm overstriding. And when I look into those big shop windows when I'm running passes, I'm like, oh, I do have that more like knee up, and I don't know, there's
the bent knee, bent knee landing,
and then I see that I'm landing more, like better than I did a half marathon in May, and then I had someone filming me slow motion, and I was like, oh wow, I'm overstriding. I kind of like what you said before. I felt like I was not doing that at all, and I was like, wow, no wonder that one was hard. But then the feeling that I have is that I'm barely even lifting my feet from the ground. And I'm not sure if that is like a good thing to have that feeling, but then seeing, like I said, in the windows, I'm seeing that, oh, there's actually a lot of lifting going on, and there is a lot of pushing. My running technique is far from perfect, but I just can tell that there's been an improvement after starting to think like that. And I'm curious about, do you have any tools for people to think about that it does, if you see the difference between what you think about and what it actually looks like, or do you believe that it should feel and look the exact same when you're running?
It should feel and look the same. I mean, once you get the movement right and start working on it, it should look pretty good. So, if you start working on your technique, everything is going to probably feel a little bit horrible for a while because you're trying out new things. So, it's natural when we start implementing new movements, it's not going to feel normal. It's only after sort of months in practice then, oh, wow, this is actually so much better than how I used to run. Oh, I'm not getting injured anymore. So, I would say definitely, like you said, is that your knees and heels should lift up as a product of good movement, of pushing back. And they can lift up if you lift them up, but what we're then using is we're using hip flexor muscles and hamstrings to make our stride look sexy, and we're also shortening our stride. So like I said before, we never want to shorten our stride. We want our stride length to get longer over time. We can obviously artificially have a really good long stride length if we reach our heels out in front. So, try and see it of getting the landing right, and then the stride length is generated from the push back rather than reaching out in front, because that's how a lot of people try to increase their stride length. But if you get that landing right, then once you got that landing right, keep on trying to chase that bigger stride length for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And it's curious. It's interesting what you're saying about the looking sexy part, because
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us, and a perfect example for myself was back when I was skating.
Mm-hmm.
I was as a junior, I was like fairly talented. I did fairly well.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't like what it looked like. Like it was, I was performing well.
Yeah.
But then I was like, I don't like the way it looks when I'm skating. I was almost embarrassed because there were so many skaters that looked better when they were skating.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those skaters I was even faster than.
Yeah.
But I had that feeling that it wasn't looking good. And then there were some other coaches, not my own coach, but some other coaches kind of like telling me that it looked a bit weird. You do this and that. And as a young skater, I kind of bought into that and started trying to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And what that led to was that I just lost all of that natural movement.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted it to look better. And speed skating, just like running, is a time-based sport.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter at all what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because I think that a lot of runners, even when they have their technique down and they're running efficiently and they found their way, they might still look at other really fast runners and be like, but I don't look like that.
Yeah.
What would you say to those that are kind of obsessed with what it looks like and wanting it to look just like their idols or other people who are running fast?
I mean, there is variation in everyone's sort of running style. So I give you sort of a generic formula, which, not a generic formula, but a formula of what, grid running technique looks like. So we're sort of built in different ways and we all move slightly differently. But you'll find that, maybe that Kipchoge's right arm does a little bit different to his left arm. So don't get hyper obsessed with anything, but you should just really start to feel it. And if it starts to feel better and you can, then that's the main thing. If it feels good, then your brain is telling your body that it feels good, and then it should start to make everything feel a lot better. So don't obsess over looking spectacular all the time or looking sexy, as we said, and just try and have sort of trust in the process of, if I do get this correct, then my body will start to respond in a positive way.
Great. Just the battery went out of my camera here, but we're still good. For the listeners who are now listening to this and thinking that, oh well, I really want to improve on my running. I want to do these things that Myles is talking about. What kind of workouts or training sessions would be the best ones for to do this? Is it like, can you think about this on every run, like whether it is an easy run, or does it need to be a workout with higher pace?
Yeah, so I would recommend, slowing down the paces, work on your technique. So particularly if we're changing our foot strike, so we'll start using a muscle called the soleus muscle a lot more. So that takes about 6 to 8 times our own body weight when we start landing correctly. So if you haven't been using that properly before because you've been overstriding or heel striking, then we're effectively going to the gym for the first time again and using that muscle. So be very careful when you start implementing technique work. Start with maybe 20 or 30 minutes, or if anything feels really sore, just cut your technique session short, and then that will basically allow you to start building up over time. So start with nice, easy runs and gradually go up to sort of a tempo, then a threshold, then you can start adding sort of like hill sprints or strides at the end once you've worked up through those speed ranks.
Got it. And then a question that I was thinking about this weekend and on my run this morning was that I think a lot of us were, and I guess this is common for all sports, but when you are, say, at the end of a marathon, last 10, 12 kilometers, 5 to 6 miles, like you're getting tired. You might have been able to get to that point of the race in a decent way.
Yeah.
How do you keep that good technique and stay consistent throughout the race with that? Because I assume that a lot of people, myself included, we lose a lot at the end, not just because we're tired in terms of the capacity, but also because we then start being worse at the running, like the technical part of the running.
Yeah. So your running form shouldn't change. You should just get slower. So if you get to a point where you can't maintain your posture, you can't maintain your head position, you can't maintain your foot strike, or you start overstriding, it's better to just walk and then unfortunately try and then run with better technique and admit that you've made some sort of error. So in terms of efficiency, you're not going to benefit anything from collapsing your posture, not going to gain anything from overstriding. You're just going to tire yourself out faster and faster.
Do you tell your clients like something specific if they are, say they're going to race a 5K or a 10K and you know that for the last 5-10 minutes they're going to be exhausted? Are there any, do you give them any advice beforehand, like something to focus more on at the end of the race?
But by this point they should have trained themselves, and I've coached them, but they should be able to coach themselves. I see runners, one of the guys I worked with in a High Rocks event, he started to drop his head because he was getting tired, but you could see it click in his head that as soon as he did that he corrected itself. So what I'm trying to do is a lot of self-diagnosis, getting people to train themselves out of these bad habits, or if these bad habits start kicking in, then being able to recognize it and correct it before it becomes an issue. So I run to points where I get fairly exhausted, and all I do is slow down. So it is possible not to lose your form completely, but you just need to be sensible with how hard you're going to push yourself.
And what do you think, like, if you don't just look at your clients, but in general, when you see runners at the end of a race, in your opinion, what are the most common mistakes that people start doing when they get tired?
Mainly people start bending from the waist more and more, so they start shifting their body position more and more forward. Then it just becomes sort of like an extended walking pattern. So as we walk, we're meant to land on our heels and then roll forward with our feet. But a lot of people try to implement that into their running, and so it just becomes sort of, I guess, in a sense, more and more painful to watch, because every time they're doing that, they're effectively tiring themselves out quicker and costing themselves in terms of efficiency.
Yeah. We talked about a lot of things now. I've learned a lot, definitely. Are there any things you, as a coach in your profession, that you feel like we should have talked about, feel like we should have touched on, that we haven't talked about, that you feel like is essential with your client, with your work with clients?
I just feel like if you're suffering with aches and pains or niggles, that's not, it's not normal. We've been sort of taught to that we should just sort of grin and bear through these things and then see a physio every 2 to 3 months who will give us a couple of strength exercises and then you're off on your way. in terms of me, for my running, the best thing I did was invest in coaching and actually learning how to do it properly and working with someone. Even though I did all the books and the reading, it wasn't until I actually started working with someone, that I was starting to make, good and real changes. And it can be a really, really enjoyable experience to go out and run pain free, and push yourself and feel your air coming in through your nose, and your breathing's right. Nothing's everything's just working together, and I think a lot of people miss out on that, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have learned a lot personally, and I feel like, I told you before we started recording that, at least for me with your content, it's so useful. I've learned a lot from just following your Instagram account, and this is definitely one of those episodes where I'm like, I think that everyone can benefit from hearing this, regardless of their level. And yeah, I just really appreciate that you took your time to be on the Marathon podcast. And for those who are super intrigued now and want to know more about you, find you on socials or reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I'm at Find Your Stride Coach on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Maybe not message me on that. I've only got about 40 followers on it. But yeah, Instagram is probably the best way to reach me. And then, yeah, just take it from there, really.
What does the future look like for you now, do you think? I mean, with you blowing up over the last few months, like I'm sure things are changing a bit.
Yeah, so I want to start traveling the world and working with more clients. One of the things I want to do is go and support Claire Holt. So if anyone's in New York for her New York City Marathon, I'll be there. And then I'll be doing a couple of trips to Kenya to work with some of the coaches there, work with some of the athletes there. And then essentially, I just want to start traveling more, working with more athletes, and just building my own knowledge, because it's not perfect yet. And hopefully the next sort of 10, 15 years, I'll get better and better at it.
Awesome. And do you also I just thought about this now that you said going to Kenya and all of that. Do you also find yourself kind of coaching on the physical level too, or are you strictly a technique coach? So that's your only area of expertise, or do you feel like you could have coached an athlete?
Yeah, I would probably say my real area of expertise is running technique. It's what gets me excited more than anything. I think no disrespect to any running coaches, but there's a lot of running coaches out there doing running coaching plans and stuff like that. So for me, it was more exciting to look at the sort of technique, the sort of physical aspect of it, and how we can get our bodies to start moving more efficiently, rather than necessarily just giving people training plans.
Great. Myles, thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm really happy to see that what you are doing is really paying off. And I'm very happy to see that people are seeing it, and that you're reaching out, like that you're reaching a lot of people with your content, because I do agree with you that within the next years, I think that your client list will grow and a lot of people will benefit from your expertise. So thank you for sharing a lot of it here on the pod.
No, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
I hope you now understand what I meant in the beginning about how this conversation can help you as a runner, how it has helped me just by having this podcast episode with Myles. So useful. I hope that you found a lot of advice and tips on this, or during this an hour and a half, to just learn more about running and how to run properly. I for sure did, and I can't wait to use some of this in my own running. Thank you so much for listening to the Marathon podcast. Go give Myles a follow, give the Marathon podcast a follow. And like I said in the beginning, please, please, please give this podcast a review. I would really appreciate it. Until the next one, next episode will be with Shaq, who is a New York-based runner, New Balance ambassador, and just a great guy in general. One of the founders of Bronx Burners. Can't wait for you guys to hear that episode. And I'll talk to you in the next one. You listen to the Marathon Podcast, brought to you by Wild Studio.